It's it's a great day today. June 7th, 2023 will be known as the day in which the greatest vice president of the 21st century decided to rain down from his capital and grace us with his presence. Former Vice President Mike Pence launched his 2024 presidential campaign Wednesday by sharply breaking with former President Donald Trump, laying out clear differences on policy and values, and arguing that Trump's push to overturn the 2020 election should be disqualifying. Pence, speaking to a crowd of supporters in Ankeny, Iowa, offered his clearest rationale for why he is challenging his old running mate for the Republican nomination. Pence accused Trump of wavering on conservative policy priorities such as curtailing abortion access and balancing the budget and bemoaning Trump's brand of politics is too divisive. The former vice president also focused extensively on the events of January 6, 2021, where pro Trump rioters stormed the Capitol, trying to stop the certification of the 2020 election, with some chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." The day marked a turning point in Pence's relationship with his former boss. And Wednesday, he argued Trump's attempts to overturn the election and his request for Pence to violate the Constitution in the process make him unfit for office. The American people deserve to know on that fateful day, President Trump also demanded, "I choose between him and our Constitution," Pence said. Now, voters will be faced with the same choice. I choose the Constitution, and I always will. The American people must know that leaders in the Republican Party will keep our oath to support and defend the Constitution, even when it is not in our political interest, Pence added. One last word that in part brings us here today. I believe that anyone who puts themselves over the Constitution should never be president of the United States, and anyone who asks someone else to put them over the Constitution should never be president of the United States again. In officially launching his campaign, Pence became the first vice president in modern times to challenge his old running mate for the party's nomination. Pence spent 4 years serving as a loyal cheerleader to Trump, defending him through a steady stream of scandals, vouching for his at times unorthodox policy decisions, and urging Americans 2020 to give the Trump Pence ticket 4 more years in office. The balancing act Pence will attempt to walk was on display Wednesday as he said he was incredibly proud of the accomplishments of the last administration, even as he sought to argue Trump should not be given another term. He now faces an uphill battle to overtake Trump at a time when many Republican primary voters view Pence as a traitor for refusing to reject 2020 election results. Others looking for a Trump alternative appear to be backing Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Given my support for our record, it might be fair to ask why I'm challenging my former running mate for the Republican nomination for president, Pence said. It begins with a promise I made to the American people and to Almighty God and ends with two different visions for the future of our party and the country. A CNN poll released late last month found Pence was the first choice of 6% of Republican and Republican-leaning primary voters, trailing Trump, who was the first choice of 53% of voters, and DeSantis, who was the first choice of 26%. A Monmouth University poll released last week asked GOP voters who they'd like to see as the Republican nominee for president, but did not give a list of names. Pence polled at 3%, well behind Trump 43%, and DeSantis 19%. Pence and his team intend to lean into the former vice president's lengthy and consistent conservative track record on foreign policy, trade, entitlement reform, and abortion, hoping that message will resonate with GOP voters who want to win general elections, and more specifically with Iowa evangelicals who will participate in the first caucus in the primary calendar next winter. Pence repeatedly needled Trump on Wednesday as he laid out some of the particulars of his agenda. The former vice president has vowed to support legislation to restrict abortion access and called on states to do the same. On Wednesday, he said Trump treats the issue of abortion as an inconvenience, blaming the issue for Republican election losses. Pence has called for common sense reform, Social Security, and Medicare to address the budget and the solvency of the programs, while Trump has urged Republicans to leave entitlements untouched. Addressing a looming debt crisis, and long-term survival of Social Security and Medicare are less important than their short-term political fortunes, Pence said Wednesday. Almost done with this article. And Pence, who in his launch video earlier Wednesday said the country needed a leader to appeal to its better angels, argued plainly in Des Moines that Trump was not capable of being that leader. Most Americans treat each other with kindness and respect, even when we disagree. It's not too much to ask our leaders to do the same, Pence said. It's clear neither Joe Biden or Donald Trump share this belief, and neither of them intend to bring this nation together. Pence is slated to attend a CNN town hall Wednesday evening in Des Moines, followed by more events Thursday in the Hawkeye State. He will travel to New Hampshire on Friday for a rally in Derry for his first campaign event in the Granite State, which hosts the first Republican primary. So, Pence is someone who, in a weird way, and I do acknowledge it's weird, and maybe I shouldn't feel this way, but in a very weird way, I feel sympathy toward. Now, of course, that sympathy isn't going to lead to me supporting him politically, but I want you to kind of look at this from his perspective. You're a guy that gets elected to the House in a Republican leaning state. And, you talk all the jargon, right? Oh, we need to do something about abortion access and tax cuts and, just the general stuff that, your party likes. And after being a congressman, you're able to become governor. You have your eyes on being president, but it's not exactly a thing you can see yourself doing in the immediate. And while you're governor, you get selected to be the VP for this guy who's never held office before, never had to do any of that ladder climbing that almost all of these people do. And for 4 years, you're his cheerleader. You're diligently waiting your turn. You're going, okay, you know what? Let him serve his 8 years, because after that, I'm going to get all his voters transferred to me, and it'll be okay. But instead, he loses the presidential election. But unlike every other person who's lost since the history of the U.S.'s founding, he refuses to accept that he lost. So he tries to get you to do something illegal by attempting to overturn the will of the people, because it didn't go the way that he wanted. And when you stand up to him and say, hey, I'm not doing this, not only does he turn on you, but the very same people who, millions upon millions of which voted for you for another 4 years as VP, go around saying they want to hang you. And then after you leave the vice presidency and you want to launch your own presidential campaign in 2024, just as you had planned to do all the way back when you were picked as his VP in 2016, instead you run into this group of voters who are extremely loyal to him and couldn't care one bit about you, to such an extent that they'll even go with a young upstart governor from a big state whose main policy is defeating wokeism and leftism and every other ism. So that's why I said, for me, I think Pence is, I'm sympathetic to him from that career perspective of, you work your way to the top and then something unexpected happens and now your career is destroyed. But let me make no mistake about mentioning this. I think Trump is an idiot. I've said that before. I've mentioned that repeatedly. I'm not his fan in the slightest. But in a primary where it was just him and Pence, I would want Trump to win, because Pence is everything wrong with the Republican Party. He is someone whose views are better left in the 40s. When you're talking about gay conversion therapy and a total abortion ban, and even, or they do little sneaky stuff like the 6-week ban, which is effectively a total one because most women don't know that they're pregnant by the first 6 weeks. So really, in every capacity, he's bad. He's not good. Again, Trump has several things that are kind of like leaning in my direction, where he's against NAFTA and other lousy trade agreements. Pence is for all of them. On international issues, he wants to be aggressive. Trump sometimes is kind of, open to being a dove. So really, it's interesting that Pence is one of the few people that could possibly enter this race that would have me like rooting Trump on, and I really don't want to root him on in the slightest. But again, Pence is not losing or polling less because his views are extreme and ridiculous, which that should be the reason he's polling at 6% or even lower than that. But it's mainly just out of his refusal to be loyal to Trump that he's doing as badly as he is. So I think he's one of the few people who I can say I genuinely do not see any path for them whatsoever, because I just think those voters, even if they agree with Pence possibly more than they do with Trump, they're going to stick with Trump. And they're going to not care about any of the stuff that Trump meant. So, like, again, these are the same people who support a guy that wanted to overturn the democratic results of the previous presidential election. And they're going to tell the VP who didn't want to break the law to do that, hey, you didn't stand by him, so we're not going to stand by you. Most Americans treat each other with kindness and respect even when we disagree. Oh man, that had me laughing. Like, all this decorum stuff is such a joke. You have 64% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. You have daily mass shootings. You want to sit here talking about who sounds Trump has mean tweets and he calls people nicknames and we need to treat each other with kindness and appeal to our better angels. Like, what the hell does that even mean? God, like, see, stuff like that makes me kind of happy that these people are not going to be anywhere near the White House because I just get tired of that nebulous. And Biden does it plenty of as much as well, talking about restoring the soul of America. And it's like, just tell me what you want to do policy wise. If I agree with it, I'll support you. If I don't, I won't back you. But I have more respect for people that actually have issue based campaigns than getting caught up in all this little. And that's kind of the another like elephant in the room that, and I know that elephant is ironic to use here considering that's their party logo or symbol rather, mascot, excuse me. But the elephant in the room is that Pence really doesn't have a reason to be running. And he's not the only one who I could say this for. Most of these candidates are basically Trump light, which is why few of them have been able to like criticize him on anything other than his rhetoric and the fact that he lost to Biden. Even that's like very limited. So when you're dealing with a field where everyone's basically a clone of each other, um, why would you go with the clones or the impressions when you can stick with the original or the one that you already have dealt with before, which is Trump? So I think he has no reason to be running other than ego. I don't believe he's going to go after Trump in the ways he should go after him. And worst of all, unlike somebody like Haley or DeSantis or Elder or Scott or Ramaswamy or Hutchinson, any of these people, unlike the rest of them, Pence can't even pretend to be opposed to what Trump did in office because he says he's proud of it. So there's just I don't see a lane for him. I think this is just an ego based run, and he's trying to he needs to lose in probably every single state before it registers to him that yeah, your career is over. The Republicans are done with you. You're never going to be president. Not because his views are extreme or ridiculous, which they are, but because he didn't stand by an attempt to overturn a democratic election in a supposed democracy. So he's getting reprimanded by the party as he rightfully should be. I just wish it were for better and more substantive reasons.